he was really a good kid. He listened. He was a good kid.
That statement echoed like a sharp cut into memory, filled with both the nostalgia and the anguish of a mother who lost her beloved child. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the actor who once captivated millions of American viewers with his warm smile, intelligence, and ideal image. For decades, Pamela remained silent in response to every question, avoiding the media concealing the truth. But at the age of 72, the arrest of Bill Cosby awakened memories that she had buried deep. In the midst of that emotional turmoil, she decided to reveal a hidden secret that she believed could make everyone reconsider the entire story of Malcolm. Is this the missing piece of American television history, or simply an unsettling coincidence? The answer will be revealed shortly. The news that stunned the nation. On July 20th, 2025, Playa Cocles Beach in Limon, Costa Rica, where waves crash against the shore like the heartbeat of the Caribbean. Beautiful, pristine, but the locals know well that beneath those crystal-clear waters lurks an invisible danger, rip current, an undercurrent that can pull anyone far from the shore in mere seconds. That afternoon, a 54-year-old American man stepped into the water. No one could have imagined that just hours later his name would fill the news. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, actor, director, producer, Grammy-winning musician. The autopsy report was released a few days later: asphyxiation due to drowning. No injuries, no direct witnesses. The case was closed cold and quiet, like dozens of other beach accidents in this tropical region. Yet that man was no ordinary tourist. He was Malcolm-Jamal Warner, a name that had been associated with the childhoods of millions of American viewers. Born in 1970 in Jersey City, New Jersey, Malcolm stepped into the spotlight at just 14 with his role as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. From 1984 to 1992, his wit and warm smile became a familiar part of millions of American households. When the show ended, Malcolm did not disappear like many child stars. He ventured into many fields: acting, directing, music. And in 2015, alongside Robert Glasper Experiment and Lala Hathaway, he won a Grammy for Best Traditional R&B Performance. Throughout more than 3 decades of career, he maintained a clean image principles and kept his personal life private. So when the news of his death spread, the shock was almost instantaneous. The hashtag #RememberMalcolm exploded more than 500,000 times within 24 hours. Instagram, Facebook flooded with behind-the-scenes photos and farewell messages. Keshia Knight. Pulliam, Little Rudy on screen with Malcolm, wrote, "He was not just a co-star, he was a real brother." Tracy Ellis Ross called him the man of light and principles. Those who had stood by his side all affirmed one thing: Malcolm never compromised on what was wrong. However, after the autopsy report, the Warner family remained silent. No press conferences, no statements, no further explanations. 3 weeks passed and silence reigned. Then on August 8, 2025, Pamela Warner, 72, broke that silence. Not on television, not behind a podium. Just a post on her personal Instagram, an old photo of her and her son with a message: "You passed peacefully without pain. You've completed your mission." On the same day, she created the account, Malcolm-Jamal Warner Living Legacy, Malcolm-Jamal Warner's Living Legacy. In her opening post, she stated, "Your story will be told in full." Just those 6 words, "told in full," sparked a wave of curiosity. Full of what if everything was just a drowning accident? What was left out? The gaps in information became fertile ground for rumors. On forums and social media, some believed she was only referring to her son's artistic legacy and the values he left behind. But there were also other voices linking Malcolm's death to relationships in the industry, to stories that had never been made public. At that time, the public still had no answers. But elsewhere in Pamela's small house, there was an item she had kept for many years. So small it fit perfectly in the palm of her hand, yet heavy enough to change how the world viewed Malcolm's death. As the headline's hidden secret began to flood YouTube, Facebook, and entertainment blogs, Pamela Warner's name was no longer on the sidelines. She became the focal point. Prelude to a media storm. When Pamela Warner's interviews began appearing more frequently on television and in print, the atmosphere surrounding the story of Malcolm-Jamal Warner gradually shifted. At first, the public simply saw them as the heartfelt words of a mother trying to protect her son's image. But over time, each sentence, each small detail she shared seemed to open new questions without clear answers. Some journalists began digging through old materials, behind-the-scenes footage, work contracts, and even archived articles from years past. Within these records, they found strange coincidences, times when Malcolm turned down major projects, closed-door meetings with undisclosed agendas, and connections within the entertainment industry that had rarely been discussed before. On social media, short clips from Pamela's interviews were cut, reposted, and given tantalizing titles. People dissected a phrase she once used: a system that protects the powerful, even though she never named anyone directly. Some believed it was merely a metaphor for the culture of silence in the industry, while others were convinced there were bigger stories hidden beneath the surface. From there, discussions began to extend into Malcolm's professional relationships, including his time working with Bill Cosby. Articles, commentaries, and video analyses multiplied, revisiting the backdrop of the 1980s, 1990s, when Cosby was one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood. Although no direct evidence linked Cosby to the matters Pamela hinted at, many people still asked, could the power dynamics in the industry have influenced Malcolm's life and career? Or were these simply speculative connections born from a string of coincidences? Pamela never answered these questions directly. She avoided naming specific individuals, yet consistently emphasized that the truth she held was not merely a mother's feelings, but based on things she had seen and heard. It was this deliberate pause, her refusal to either confirm or deny, that became the prelude to a media storm. Reporters began seeking out people who had worked with both Malcolm and Cosby, probing for behind-the-scenes accounts. Some spoke only in general terms about the work environment, others chose to remain silent. The public, already accustomed to explosive revelations from the entertainment world, now faced a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. There was no definitive conclusion yet. The scattered pieces continued to be arranged in countless ways, and in every version of the picture, The Cosby Show's name surfaced somewhere, an unavoidable part of the broader narrative. The Cosby Show: invisible pressure and a lingering inner struggle. The tragic downfall of Bill Cosby after his shocking scandal lifted the curtain on many hidden corners of one of the most successful television series in history, The Cosby Show. But the real earthquake came from a source no one expected: Pamela Warner. Her cryptic statements shook the public's belief in the perfect Huxtable family, revealing secrets not only about the relationship between Malcolm and Cosby, but also about the invisible pressures and enduring inner battle of a young star. The first and perhaps most fundamental secret lay in Bill Cosby's absolute power. As the creator, producer, and lead star, Cosby was not just an actor, he was a mogul, a father figure, and a mentor, both on screen and off. Every decision regarding acting, dialogue, or even the direction of the character Theo Huxtable had to pass through his filter. As a teenager, Malcolm-Jamal Warner had to live in the enormous shadow of a pre-shaped character. This pressure was not just professional, but also psychological, forcing him to constantly strive to meet the expectations of a father figure on screen, who also held ultimate authority in real life. Pamela's revelations also hinted at a heavy silence behind the scenes. In an environment where Cosby was the center, there might have been moments when Malcolm witnessed things that were not right but could not speak out. This silence, as Pamela may have implied, was not complicity but a survival mechanism, a habit imposed to protect one's career, maintain harmony, and preserve the image of the perfect family they had built. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's silence after Cosby's scandal broke may have been the result of a harsh truth. Even within an empire that seemed perfect, there existed an invisible golden cage where personal freedom and voice were traded for fame and success. After The Cosby Show ended, another battle began, an enduring fight to escape the shadow of Theo Huxtable. For Malcolm, this was not only a professional challenge, but also a prolonged identity crisis. The image of a mischievous yet lovable teenage son had embedded itself deeply in the minds of audiences worldwide. Every attempt Malcolm made to take on different roles met with skepticism. When he played an adult man, audiences still saw the same Theo Huxtable from years before. This was a harsh reality of acting, and Pamela's disclosures offered a deeply empathetic and painful view into a struggle Malcolm had silently endured. These difficulties forced Malcolm to explore other paths. He became a director-producer and even a talented jazz musician. These choices were not only strategic career moves, but also a strong declaration, a determined effort to prove that he was not Theo Huxtable, but Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Pamela may have revealed the sleepless nights, the moments of discouragement, and the quiet sacrifices her brother made to escape that shadow. This secret reminds us that behind every legendary on-screen character is a real human being silently fighting to assert their true self. When the pieces of the story were assembled even without being named, Bill Cosby still loomed like a shadow in every conversation. There was no outright accusation, no concrete evidence, yet whispers about him persisted, like an undercurrent flowing beneath Hollywood's seemingly calm surface. Bill Cosby and the whispers. Bill Cosby, in the memories of millions of Americans, was once a symbol of kindness and safety. Throughout 8 seasons of The Cosby Show, he played not just a humorous and ideal father figure, but also the creative soul behind the series, presenting an image of an intellectual African-American family full of love, breaking the outdated molds of Hollywood. To the audience, he was America's dad. But then time and serious allegations shattered that image. From being a celebrated star, he became the center of a series of lawsuits and controversies, leaving the public with 2 completely opposing versions of Cosby, the glorious icon of the past and the infamous character of the present. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, who played Theo Huxtable Cosby's youngest son on screen, was an inseparable part of that golden era. Warner started his career as a teenager, growing up right before the audience's eyes, and Cosby was the one who guided and shaped him both professionally and publicly. For many years after The Cosby Show ended, even though their paths diverged, the public always assumed the two were still connected, as if the bond from the set had never been broken. That's why when something happened to Warner, Cosby's name resurfaced. Not from mainstream media, where information is verified and clearly disseminated, but from the dark corners of social media, where rumors are nurtured by fragmented pieces and collective imagination. YouTube videos with titles like New Evidence blog posts about the mysterious USB or underground networks quickly spread, even though no one provided any authentic documentation. In fact, the autopsy report published the cause of Warner's incident, which was entirely separate from Cosby, but that wasn't enough to stop the wave of speculation. Once the public has existing memories and biases, they will connect the dots even when there's a vast gap between them. Pamela Warner. Malcolm's mother only deepened the story's layers of meaning. In her rare statements, she never directly mentioned Cosby, but neither did she close the door on any suspicions. She said she would tell the full story of her son at the appropriate time, and that she would not remain silent if something unusual happened. It was this ambiguity that the public cherished enough to avoid being labeled as an accusation, yet still enough to spark a wave of theories. At a memorial, when Pamela had just stepped out of the car, a voice from the crowd shouted, "Tell us about Cosby." She paused briefly, her eyes directed toward the source of the question, then continued walking without answering. That fleeting moment was instantly shared hundreds of times online, analyzed from every raised eyebrow to the speed of her footsteps. To the followers, sometimes silence is the loudest answer. The media understood this mechanism well. When the story involves a character with a tumultuous history, any information void is immediately filled with speculation. And Cosby, with all his glory and shadows, became a perfect focal point for all the whispers. Once his name appeared, the story quickly shifted from a personal event into a piece of the bigger picture that the public believed was being concealed. In the following months, each time Pamela appeared, cameras and eyes followed closely. People waited for her to open the door that had only been slightly ajar. Would there be a press conference, a memoir, or a video revealing something untold? Meanwhile, social media continued to weave one layer after another, making the line between truth and rumor increasingly blurred. The waiting turned into obsession, and obsession became a kind of belief, a belief that had never been proven. In the world of incomplete stories, Bill Cosby still looms like a long shadow. It might just be the legacy of a golden era, or it might be the result of the scandals that have shaped the public's perception of him forever. But whatever it is, that name continues to appear in every whisper, every theory, like an anchor that cannot be detached from the collective memory. And as long as Pamela's story remains unfinished, those whispers will continue to find a way to echo somewhere between the boundaries of truth and imagination. But until there is solid evidence, everything remains in the gray area between truth and rumor. And it is in that gray area that the story continues to spread, attracting more followers, sparking the curiosity of millions. They wait for every new statement from Pamela, scrutinizing every detail in photos, videos, and wondering about the full story she spoke of. And one day, Pamela would no longer just be the mother standing on the sidelines of the story. She stepped up, placing herself at the eye of the storm, ready to pay the price so that what she believed to be the truth would no longer be buried. From that moment on, her journey turned in a different direction, no longer silent endurance but a public fight. A journey where every step, every word carried the weight of knocking on a locked door. The struggle journey of a mother. Not dramatic, not revealing evidence as many expected, she let her heart guide the way, telling Malcolm's story not as an incident but as a life. The 6 aspects of memories and feelings she shared were not secrets exposed, but truths illuminated to honor a person, her son, in the most complete and human way. First, she spoke of a heart full of compassion. Malcolm had a big heart for humanity, she wrote, and this was not just a polite compliment. During his artistic career, he participated in over 20 community campaigns, from programs supporting children to projects promoting mental health for youth. She mentioned the mission he always believed was his own, helping people recognize their inner strength, transforming to live a full life. Not everyone knew, but in his final year, he sponsored 150 scholarships for underprivileged students in the district where he was born. For Pamela, this was proof of what she called purposeful humanity. Not just kindness, but choosing ways for that kindness to create change. Behind the public image of an artist, Malcolm was also a devoted father and husband. Pamela wrote that he loved life, passionately, loved his wife and daughter, unconditionally, without hesitation. There were late nights of performances, yet he would still FaceTime to say goodnight to his daughter, sometimes only catching a few words from her before she fell asleep. She shared this as a personal memory, enough to allow readers to glimpse a side of him that the media rarely touched, the side reserved for family. Her relationship with Malcolm was also a secret in its own way, not because it was hidden, but because it was so profound that it was hard to put into words. "My son was a teacher, a coach, a soulmate, a business partner, and my best friend," she wrote. A long list, but each word carried its own story. They had once co-founded an independent film production company, debated for hours over scripts, shared moments of success and failure. Malcolm was also the son whom his father, although rarely in the public eye, was immensely proud of and loved passionately, unconditionally. With art, Malcolm was a passionate lover. He was fascinated by the magic of acting, always refining his craft through classes and challenging roles. Pamela reminded us that he entered music late at the age of 26, but just 5 years later he won a Grammy and received 2 other nominations. This was not just talent, but tireless work. Nights spent perfecting every note, days filming for 14 hours straight, all coming together to form an artistic legacy that she called a film that can't be rewound but will always be played. There was one memory she would never forget when Malcolm was just 8 years old. After his first stage performance, he stepped off the stage and told his mother that he wanted to be an actor for life. No one knew that this would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. 2 decades later, that boy had lived up to his words, not just acting but creating characters and stories for the ages. The final part of her tribute was what made many remain silent the longest: his peaceful passing. A drowning death is often seen as a tragedy, but Pamela chose to view it differently. Malcolm was born from water and transformed through water. He left the way he came, through water. This is his moment. His mission on earth is complete, she wrote. Her words were both a farewell and a healing gesture. She affirmed that he left peacefully and without pain, turning an irreplaceable loss into a story of a journey completed. When reading those lines, one realizes this was not a revelation, as the rumors promised, but a retelling, enough to understand but not to exploit. Pamela didn't give the public all the answers, but she gave them something else: a complete view of Malcolm, untainted by doubt, not reduced to a single event. And it is this way of telling that opened a new direction for the story. It didn't close the debate, but it made many start to ask, how many stories do we only know through newspaper fragments? And how many people have chosen silence to protect what remains? Pamela kept the identity of Malcolm's wife and daughter private, a decision she called protecting privacy. But in the world of the internet, this was immediately interpreted as a secret. Whether she intended it or not, this action became another chapter in the debate between private boundaries and public demand. For her, what needed to be said has been said, within the limits that a mother chose to protect those left behind. But for the public, this is still an open story. Supporters view it as a model for how to handle the media with dignity, while skeptics see it as evidence that something still remains undisclosed. It is in this space, between what is told and what is withheld, that Pamela and Malcolm's story continues to live. not only in the memories of those who knew him, but also in the minds of millions who never met him, but were touched by the words of a mother. By the end of 2025, Pamela plans to hold a formal memorial ceremony, a modest but significant event, where close colleagues and fans can reflect on Malcolm's journey. Here she will introduce the Warner Arts Mentorship Program, an art mentorship program for youth inspired by how Malcolm mentored young actors. For Pamela, this is not a battle to win or lose with the media, but a journey to bring the truth to light to ensure her son's image is not reduced to just a role or a sensational headline. The truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be persistent, she said. Through the words of his mother, Malcolm is not just a memory of an artist, but also a reminder that sometimes the greatest legacy we leave is not in awards or contracts, but in how we live authentically with ourselves and those we love. And perhaps this is also the secret of continuation. When a life ends, but the values and love from that life silently revive in the hearts of those left behind to continue spreading. The legacy resurrected. Since his debut on screen in 1984 as Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show, Malcolm has entered the lives of millions of American families. The show ran for 8 seasons, drawing over 30 million viewers each week, bringing the cast an Emmy Award and making them cultural icons. But for Malcolm, that spotlight was never the goal. He once told his mother, "I don't want to be remembered just for one teenage role." Over the span of 4 decades, Malcolm sought to redefine himself. He appeared in over 25 films and TV series, from guest roles on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to more substantial parts in Suits and Major Crimes. He directed several television episodes, released 2 spoken word albums, and in 2015, he stepped onto the Grammy stage to accept the award for Best Traditional R&B Performance, alongside Robert Glasper Experiment and Lala Hathaway. That #1 Grammy, dozens of nominations and awards, is proof of persistence, not fleeting luck. Yet much of what made Malcolm who he was never made it into the news. He dedicated over 200 hours a year to community work, sponsoring scholarships for students of color in New Jersey, participating in reading programs for children in public schools, and organizing mental health talks for youth. He could talk to a 10-year-old about dealing with school pressure and make that kid feel like they weren't alone, shared a high school teacher from Newark. Malcolm's role as a father was also exceptional. When his daughter was born, a major magazine offered $50,000 for exclusive photos of her first birthday party. He flatly declined. "No amount of money is worth trading my daughter's childhood," he told his mother. From then on, every image of his child on social media was carefully curated, and he never publicly disclosed her real name. Pamela knew that in the age of social media, every secret was at risk of being exploited into a headline. So when people asked about Malcolm's untold secrets, she tried to redirect. To her, secrets weren't scandals or conspiracies, but positive things rarely talked about. It was the hundreds of thank you letters from students whose tuition he sponsored. It was the unfinished music files on Malcolm's hard drive where he experimented with blending jazz and hip-hop. And it was the notebook he carried for 10 years, jotting down script ideas that never made it to screen. She called all of these things living legacy. Along with Malcolm's friends and colleagues, she began an archival project, over 1,000 photos, hundreds of audio recordings never before seen, behind-the-scenes videos, and even audition tapes from small clubs in Los Angeles. The goal was not to expose or shock, but to organize memories so the public could see a complete Malcolm, the artist, the father, and the friend. Of course, not everything could be shared. Some details about his health, his spouse's private life, and images of his young child would be kept private. Pamela understood the fine line between remembering and invading privacy. She had seen many celebrity families harmed by the media, exploiting fragments of their private lives as commodities. "There are some things, when kept, are more beautiful than when exposed for the world to scrutinize," she said. That's also why she chose the concept of hidden but honest, things that are hidden but honest. Not covering up the truth, but also not letting the truth be distorted into a clickbait tool. Pamela believes that this way of telling not only protects her son's image, but also sets a new standard for remembering the departed, respectful, comprehensive, and humane. Looking back, Malcolm's legacy doesn't lie in the number of awards or contracts, but in how he lived and inspired others. He passed away at the age of 53, leaving a gap on screen and in music, but his value continues to spread through those who met and worked with him. When the archival project is completed, Pamela will know she's accomplished one thing: giving the public a fuller picture of Malcolm. Not just the funny kid from The Cosby Show, Not just the Grammy-winning artist, but a man with beliefs, principles, and an open heart. Pamela Warner's story is not just one of loss, but also a testament to the power of love, compassion, and the unwavering determination to protect the truth, even when that truth can't always be fully revealed. And when a mother chooses to step into the light to share the journey of her son with respect and humanity. That's when we realize some stories must be heard with the heart, not just with the eyes. If you want to continue this journey with us and uncover more stories behind the spotlight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every bit of support from you is a source of motivation for us to bring even more meaningful and authentic content to you.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.